we continue our series of retrospectives of iconic Sierra Adventure game franchises. You can already find similar full history videos about Quest for Glory, Space Quest, King's Quest, Gabriel Knight, and a 2-hour documentary on the history of the genre with the rise and fall of the adventure games. If you like the content of my channel, please consider supporting it by subscribing and turning on the notifications for it. You can also consider becoming a patron in patreon.com. Patrons get to choose the topics of upcoming videos, get exclusive updates, and will also be mentioned in the credits of each new video. You can find the link to patreon.com in the description of this video also. Leisure Suit Larry is an adult-themed video game series created by Al Law. It was published by Sierra from 1987 up to 2009 and then by Codemasters. The first 6 Leisure Suit Larry titles, along with Magna Cum Laude and Love for Sale Mobile, were distributed by Vivendi Games, now a part of Activision Blizzard. The series is also active today with 2 new titles that have been released by Crazy Bunch, but with no direct or indirect involvement by Al Law. In this video we will cover the first 6 games starring Larry Laffer and published by Sierra, and the latest 2 entries that have the same protagonist and have been developed by Crazy Bunch. The 2 Larry Lovage games, Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude and Leisure Suit Larry Box Office Bust, are something entirely different, and I personally categorize those games as shovelware, not worthy of mentioning in a Leisure Suit Larry retrospective. The series has its origins in Sierra's earlier soft porn adventure, a 1981 text adventure created by designer Chuck Benton. The story and basic structure from that game were reused for the first Larry game. The Larry games were one of Sierra's most popular game series during the genre's heyday when it was first released in the mid-80s. The series contains the only games produced by Sierra that contains significant sexual themes, and I'm talking about graphic adventures and not text adventures. In general, the games follow the escapades of Larry Laffer as he attempts to persuade a variety of women to sleep with him. A common link between the games are Larry's exploration of luxurious and cosmopolitan locations like hotels, beaches, resorts, and casinos. The character of Larry Laffer was voiced by Jan Rabson. The total sales of the first 5 Leisure Suit Larry games surpassed 2 million copies by 1996, which was the date for Love for Sale's release. As of 2011, the series has sold more than 10 million copies. Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Launched Lizards is a graphic adventure game developed by Sierra Online and published in 1987. It was developed for the PC-DOS and the Apple II and later ported to other platforms such as the Amiga, Atari ST, Apple IIgs, Apple Macintosh, and the Tandy Color Computer 3. The protagonist, Larry Laffer, is a 40-year-old loser who lives in his mother's basement and has not yet lost his virginity. Having grown weary of his lonely existence, he decides to visit the resort city of Lost Wages, a parody of Las Vegas, hoping to experience what he has not lived before and to finally find the woman of his dreams. Larry starts with nothing but an out-of-style 1970s disco-era leisure suit and $94 in his pocket. His quest involves 4 possible women: a nameless, seedy-looking sex worker, Fawn, a club-goer of low moral fiber Faith, a receptionist who is faithful to her boyfriend, and Eve, a bathing beauty and Larry's ultimate goal. The game begins outside a bar in Lost Wages. The city consists of 5 areas: Lefty's Bar, a hotel casino, a 24-hour wedding chapel, a disco, and a convenience store. The player can walk between areas that are next to each other, but other areas can only be accessed by hailing a taxi, which costs the player money. Failure to do so results in Larry's being mugged or hit by traffic. Players control Larry's movements with the directional keys and by inputting commands into a text parser, like open window, close, etc. If Larry is too far away from a person or object to comply, or if the command is invalid, a caution message appears with hints on what to do. Larry's interactions with key women are accompanied by a detailed image of whomever he is speaking with, unlike other non-player characters. With the exception of the prostitute, each woman shuns Larry at first, but responds favorably to gifts of varying costs. Giving gifts to women is needed to advance to the game's final area, the hotel penthouse. To this end, money is essential to advance through the game. The only available method of earning money is to gambling in the casino, playing blackjack and slots. A version of the game with VGA graphics and Soundcard audio support appeared in 1991. Retitled as Leisure Suit Larry 1 in the land of the launched lizards and using the new game engine Sierra's Creative Interpreter, it was released for the Amiga, DOS and Macintosh. Allo, a former high school teacher, has gained a reputation as Sierra with his work on Disney-licensed entertainment titles such as Donald Duck Playground, Winnie the Pooh in the 100-Acre Wood, and The Black Cauldron. In 1982, Sierra had released a text-only game on the Apple II titled Soft Porn Adventure. In 1986, after Sierra lost the Disney license, Al Law suggested that Sierra should remake Soft Porn Adventure with the improved tools now at their disposal, and Ken Williams agreed. Law, who considered the original Soft Porn Adventure a primitive early effort, borrowed its basic structure and added a graphic game engine, Sierra's Adventure Game Interpreter, made famous by the King's Quest I, Quest for the Crown, improvised humor, and an on-screen protagonist, Larry Laffer. Chuck Benton, creator of the Soft Porn Adventure, is included in the Leisure Suit Larry's 1 end credits, as the game's layout and puzzles are identical to those found in the earlier title. However, Lowe said that in Soft Porn Adventure there were no characters in the game, there was no central character at all, and there were almost no characters to the women. The game was co-designed and illustrated by Mark Crow, creator of the Space Quest series, and co-programmed by Ken Williams. Larry's sales were poor at first, with only 4,000 copies sold upon its release. Many stores refused to stock the game because of its adult content, which was subject to controversy. Some resellers refused to handle the game, while others refused to advertise it, and one refused to list the game on its list of bestsellers. In effect, its first month sales were lower than any new Sierra product launch in years. However, word of mouth spread quickly, and by the year's end, the game became a commercial success, selling over 300,000 copies. Leisure Suit Larry Goes Looking for Love in Several Wrong Places is the second game in the Leisure Suit Larry series of graphical adventure games designed by Al Law and published by Sierra Online in 1988. Like its predecessor, Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Launched Lizards, it was developed for multiple platforms including MS-DOS, Atari ST, and the Amiga. It utilizes Sierra's Creative Interpreter engine featuring 16-color EGA graphics and a mouse-based interface for movement. The opening sequence of the game finds Larry mowing the lawn of Eve, his sexual encounter from the ending of the previous game, implying the pair have remained together. However, this is quickly revealed to be an instance of an unreliable narrator as Eve pulls into the driveway with only the vaguest recollection of who Larry is. Realizing that this affair with Eve was merely a one-night stand, Larry wanders off, winning the lottery as well as a free vacation after stumbling into a dating game show. Unlike the original Leisure Suit Larry, the game follows a linear story progression similar to Sierra's other adventure games, particularly later entries in the King's Quest series. The player character's movements are controlled via the cursor keys, the mouse, or even the joystick in the case of the Amiga, although a text parser is still used for other actions. Rather than navigating through a single city, the player character is guided through a variety of puzzles and mazes. The first sequel of the series used Sierra Online's new adventure game engine called Sierra Creative Interpreter with full 320 by 200 resolution, mouse and sound card support. In addition to sharing the same engine, the game parallels the King's Quest series in its realistic art style, particularly in regard to Larry's character portrait and grand adventure elements, including a number of diverse settings. Among the many women Larry meets over the course of the game is Rosella of Daventry, the protagonist of King's Quest IV. With their SCI engine, Sierra dropped disk-based protection schemes. The game has a copy protection screen where one of several pictures of women are displayed and the user must enter their phone number as given in the manual. Sierra Online intentionally toned down the titular character's sexual escapades for the sequel. According to series creator Al Law, this lack of Leisure Suit Larry's trademark humor is an oft-cited criticism of the game. Leisure Suit Larry Goes Looking for Love in Several Wrong Places received mostly positive reviews upon its release and sold more than 250,000 copies. Leisure Suit Larry 3, Passionate Patty in Pursuit of the Pulsating Pectorals, is a graphical adventure game designed by Al Law and published by Sierra Online for DOS, Atari ST, and the Amiga in 1989 as the third entry in their Leisure Suit Larry series. The story begins 5 years after the events of Leisure Suit Larry Goes Looking for Love in Several Wrong Places. Following Larry's victory over Dr. Nonuki, the tropical island of Non-Tunit has become a resort reminiscent of Honolulu, Hawaii. Larry has settled into a high-paying job in Natives Incorporated and lives in a luxurious house with his wife, Kalalau. Larry's current boss is Kalalau's father. After years of marriage, Larry's union ends abruptly when Kalalau dumps him for another woman and soon finds himself unemployed as well. With this news, Larry retreats into a phone booth like Superman and swaps his Aloha t-shirt for his signature white suit, firmly announcing his return to the swinger lifestyle. The game takes place on the Non-Tunit Island, the tropical setting from the previous game, which has since been transformed into a resort. Like the city setting of Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards, the island has several areas and is fully explorable at the game's start. Littered throughout the resort are the series' main protagonist Larry Laffer's potential mates. The basic structure of the game involves Larry presenting each woman with gifts, although none of these items require money to obtain, unlike in the original Larry game. Leisure Suit Larry 3 features a second playable character, Passionate Patty, over whom the player briefly assumes control. Patty's portion of the game is much the same as Larry's, including multiple death scenes and a detailed character portrait of her love interest, a male stripper. However, the Patty sequences are more reminiscent of traditional adventure games, requiring players to navigate through a maze as well as collect items for use in later puzzles. As was the case with Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards, the game begins with a series of tongue-in-cheek questions to which the authors reasoned only adults would know the answer. The game utilizes Sierra's creative interpreter, resulting in a graphic style similar to its immediate predecessor, the 1988 Leisure Suit Larry Goes Looking for Love in Several Wrong Places. The controls feature a mouse-based interface and a text parser for directing the player's character's actions. With Leisure Suit Larry 3, Sierra decided to return to the adult-oriented themes which were almost absent from the previous game. The artistic style of the game's characters are more cartoony and exaggerated than in the previous one, which opted for a more realistic approach. The instruction manual, which was packaged with the game, resembles a tourist manual with several advertisements which functions as codes for passing Sierra's copy protection. Leisure Suit Larry 3 won an Excellence Award from the editors of Game Player's PC Strategy Guide. In 1991, PC Format placed the first 3 Leisure Suit Larry titles on its list of the 50 best computer games of all time. Leisure Suit Larry 4, The Missing Floppies, is the name for a never-made 4th installment often regarded as an in-joke. The name, used by official sources and fans, refers to rumors that the reason for the cancellation of the game was the losing of the game's original production floppies, after which the developers refused to remake the game from scratch. Other sources claim that it was nothing but an internal office prank. The franchise's installments were numbered as if this installment has been published. The actual 4th installment was Leisure Suit Larry 5, Passionate Patty Does a Little Undercover Work. Al Law gave 2 official reasons for the cancellation of Leisure Suit Larry 4. The first was that Sierra had begun work on a multiplayer installment for the Sierra network, but the project failed, mostly due to technical reasons. The second was that the ending of Larry 3 was definitive and somehow metafictional, since it showed Larry and Patty coming to the Sierra studios to make games based on their adventures, as well as living happily in a mountain cabin in Coarse Gold. This completed a relatively cohesive trilogy and was a dead end for the new story arc. According to production notes given by Law, the following events must be assumed to have happened between Larry 3 and Larry 5 to connect the 2 games. Larry and Patty plan to marry. Patty leaves him at a Yosemite church to pursue her career, but Larry is gone when she returns. The villain of Larry 5, Julius Biggs, somehow steals the game discs and Larry suffers amnesia. The absence of the floppy disks was introduced as a plot element in the sequel to explain how Larry, as a computer-generated character, came to suffer from amnesia. Leisure Suit Larry 5, Passionate Patty Does a Little Undercover Work, is a graphical adventure game developed and published by Sierra Online for the Amiga, DOS, and Macintosh computers in 1991. It is the 4th entry in the Leisure Suit Larry series and the first Larry game to have a 256 color graphics and a fully icon-based interface. The absence of Leisure Suit Larry 4 forms the basis of this newest installment. Julius Biggs has stolen the missing floppies of the game and caused Larry Laffer to become amnesiac. Larry is now in the adult film industry, working for the mafia-connected company Nozan Porn Prod Corp. His boss sends him across the United States to scout for models to appear in America's Sexiest Home Videos. Meanwhile, Patty is recruited by the FBI to dig up incriminating evidence on 2 record companies which are suspected of hiding subliminal messages in their songs. At the same time, the company schemes to eliminate the competition in their industry by donating money to CAIN, Conservatives Against Nearly Everything. Leisure Suit Larry 5 expands on the multi-character feature of the previous installment, with control periodically passing between the protagonists Larry and Patty. A difference in the interface is that it includes the zipper icon, enabling the character to perform an erotic action. The overall difficulty is greatly reduced in comparison with previous games. Neither character can become trapped or die, and losing the game is almost impossible. Many of the items players collect on their journey are merely optional, only triggering alternative solutions and affecting the final score, but not the game's progress. In general, Leisure Suit Larry 5 was received positively by fans and critics, who described it as a thoroughly enjoyable game. Its combined sales did not surpass the 250,000, which was close to the average copies each entry in the series has sold. Leisure Suite Larry 6 Shape Up or Sleep Out is the fifth entry in the Leisure Suite Larry series of graphical adventure games published by Sierra Online. Originally developed for MS-DOS in 1993, an enhanced CD-ROM version was published a year later. Larry Laffer is once again single at the outset of the game as his girlfriend Passionate Patty is off doing her own thing. She is mentioned only briefly by the narrator at one point in the game and appears in the calendar with the game. After completing and losing on the television dating show Stallions, Larry gets an all-expenses paid trip to La Costa Lotta, a refined health spa. Due to his status as a non-paying guest, he is treated rudely by the staff and given the worst room on the premises. As such, none of the available women in the resort want anything to do with Larry, though it is possible to change their mind with the appropriate gifts. The game runs on the SCI 1.1 engine. Larry's movements are controlled with a point-and-click interface. Graphics use VGA again to make more elaborate sprites and detailed pictures of women, even if the colors are a bit garish, though the game no longer has placeholder backgrounds. Deaths were brought back and the difficulty has been increased, though they can very easily be undone. The game was also remade with the SCI-2 engine and further enhanced with high-resolution Super VGA graphics in 1994, also featuring full voice acting for the first time in the series. The game's reviews called it a very clever game that will easily offend the Puritan-minded, just as it might offend the experienced gamer looking for a serious puzzle challenge. It was well received by critics, but its sales were below the franchise's average. Leisure Suite Larry Love for Sale is an adventure game originally developed and published by Sierra Online in 1996. It was the last Leisure Suite Larry game written by the series creator Al Law and the last to feature the original protagonist Larry Laffer as the main character until the release of Leisure Suite Larry Wet Dreams Don't Dry in 2018. Love for Sale is the first Larry game since the third to pick up immediately where its predecessor left off. In typical fashion, it features Larry getting dumped by the woman who represented the ultimate goal of Larry 6, Samara. The formula is much the same as the previous games. The twist is that Larry was a passenger on a cruise ship populated by parodies of famous people. The plot revolves around Larry's attempt at winning a weekly contest held on the ship by Captain Thigh, a gorgeous blonde. The contest involves a series of other games varying from legitimate sports competitions like bowling to naughtier things like a machine created to test one's sexual prowess. Each passenger is given a scorecard with a selection of the various competitions to compete in, and the passenger with the highest score at the end of the week wins. The prize is an additional free week on the cruise spent sharing the captain's cabin. Players can appear in the game by placing voice samples of selected dialogue and a digitized photo in particular directory. Due to time constraints, the information to do so was not printed in the manual but was published sometime later in an online announcement. Love for Sale also provides a more literal than usual interpretation of Easter eggs. When certain obscure actions are performed, a small icon representing an Easter egg flashes in a corner of the screen. This usually indicates that a seduction scene can now be played featuring full nudity that is normally obscured. The game also shipped with a CyberSniff 2000, a sheet of numbered scratch and sniff paper corresponding to a number displayed on the screen at a certain location, so that the player can get a sense of what the area the player character is in smells like. Leisure Suite Larry Love for Sale was originally announced under the title Leisure Suite Larry 7 Young Hairs Away, according to creator Al Law. The development team were initially planning to make the game with live-action full-motion video, but according to Al Law, what we found out was we're writing cartoons here. If we did straight video, it becomes not only ludicrous but also obscene. This was the first Leisure Suit Larry game to receive an ESRB rating mature upon its original release. Allo acknowledged that the game was considerably more risky than previous installments of Leisure Suit Larry, but maintained the focus on the humor rather than the nudity or sexual content, and that the game would not appeal to those looking for pornography. The game was mostly criticized for its puzzles and reintroduction of a text parser. According to Allo, sales of Love for Sale surpassed 280,000 units by early 1999. In 2006, he remarked in an interview that it had ultimately sold almost 750,000 copies, plus many more on the various Larry collections. Leisure Suit Larry 8, tentatively subtitled Lost in Space or Explores Uranus in some references, was in full development in 1998 until funding was cut. Shortly afterwards, Sierra's Adventure Games department was disbanded and Allo left the company on February of 1999. Like the canned Space Quest sequel, Larry 8 was to feature 3D computer graphics, but no more than a few test renders now survive. The game Leisure Suit Larry Explores Uranus, as well as its teaser, was referenced in Leisure Suit Larry Love for Sale, triggered with an Easter egg, or as a teaser after completing the game. In 2013, Allo pointed out that the title is still being considered with support from co-series writer Josh Mantel. In 2003, Sierra Entertainment announced that the Leisure Suit Larry franchise was being revived with a 7th game called Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude. This is the first game in which Allo is not involved in any way, as this game was created by game developer High Voltage Software. On his website, Lowe talks about how he was in talks with Sierra about working with them on the game, but then they stopped contacting him as they went into downsizing. Later, he received a letter from a writer on the game where it was revealed that the game had long since been written by the time he entered discussions with Sierra. The new Larry game does not star Larry Laffer, but a new character, his nephew Larry Lovett. There are numerous homages to the earlier Larry games. Reviews of the game were mixed, with some praising the game for its humor but panning it for its gameplay. The second game in the Larry Lovett series, Leisure Suit Larry Box Office Bust, was even worse. It was developed by Team 17 and published by Codemasters for Microsoft Windows, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in 2009. The box office bust was met with negative reviews, receiving numerous Worst Game of the Year awards. Thankfully, the whole concept of a new Larry Lovett game was dropped and saved us from further destruction of the franchise. In 2018, the rights for the Leisure Suit Larry series were picked up by Crazy Bunch, a German developer who went on to release new games in the franchise. Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Don't Dry is an adventure game developed by German studio Crazy Bunch and published by Assemble Entertainment for Microsoft Windows, Mac OS, Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 4. The game is set during the 21st century and follows Larry as he attempts to navigate the world of online dating in order to meet up with his latest dream girl. The game begins with Larry waking up in a dark room, unaware of where he is or what is happening. He leaves the room via an elevator that places him in front of Lefty's, where he realizes that the landscape has dramatically changed. Inside the bar, Larry talks to Lefty, who tells him that he has been missing for about 30 years and that much has changed in his absence, even as Larry has seemingly not changed at all, with the exception of him being thinner. Briefly taken aback, Larry nevertheless resolves himself to chasing women. The game is not a parody of any known title. It is commonly assumed that the game's name is a parody of the 2014 adventure game D4 Dark Dreams Don't Die, but the developers did not confirm this when asked. Allo, creator of the original Leisure Suit Larry games, was not involved with the game and prior to its release stated that he was unimpressed with the game's title. Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Don't Dry received mixed reviews. The PC version has a score of 71% on Metacritic, while the Switch version has a score of 50%. The game received praise from outlets such as Adventure Gamers, which felt that the game was an enjoyable addition to the Leisure Suit Larry series. The main criticism was behind the game's puzzle design, which can occasionally confuse players. There are also instances in the game with maze-like puzzles that are used to improve the game's duration rather than offer anything else plot-wise or setting-wise. Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Dry Twice is an adventure video game developed by German studio Crazy Bunch and published by Assemble Entertainment for Microsoft Windows, Mac OS, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One as the latest entry in the Leisure Suit Larry series to feature Larry Laffer as the main protagonist. The game is a direct sequel to Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Don't Dry and follows Larry as he attempts to reunite with Faith, the woman he fell in love with and lost during Wet Dreams Don't Dry. Following the events of the previous game, Larry is stranded in Cancun and is being forced to marry the chief's daughter. However, Larry still mourns for his Mrs. Faith, who was last seen drifting out to sea. Larry realizes that Faith is his true love and must find her at any cost and make amends for the mistakes he made in the previous game. He escapes Cancun and becomes shipwrecked on the Calauas archipelago. With the help of his pipe phone and its artificial intelligence spy, Larry explores the islands of the archipelago searching for his beloved Faith. Development followed the same process as with the previous game, with static hand-drawn backgrounds and animated 2D characters. The multi-platform release of both games assisted in establishing Larry as a character known by a larger audience, but both games failed to impress. Leisure Suit Larry Wet Dreams Dry Twice received mixed reviews with a 73% score in Metacritic. That was the full history of the Leisure Suit Larry series, a franchise that traces its origins and first steps during the early days of the genre. It is one of the few old-school adventure games that it is still active today, even though substantially changed. Do not forget to watch my other videos covering the full history of more iconic adventure game franchises like King's Quest, Space Quest, Quest for Glory, and Gabriel Knight. Also, you can find in my channel a 2-hour documentary covering the rise and fall of the adventure games. If you like my content, please support the channel by subscribing and turning on the notifications for it. You can also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com. Patrons get to choose the topics of upcoming videos, get exclusive updates, and will also be mentioned in the credits of each new video. You can find the link to patreon.com in the description of this video. Thank you all for watching.